Welcome back to Insects for Fun. Today, we're shrinking way down again, but this time to explore the world of mites. These tiny critters are often overlooked or mistaken for bugs, but in reality, mites are their own incredible group. From soil health to skin conditions and even relationships with insects and plants, mites are everywhere. So let's get to know them. Mites are part of the class Arachnida, which also includes spiders, ticks, and scorpions. More specifically, they belong to the subclass Acari. There are around 50,000 described species of mites, but scientists estimate that there could be well over 1 million species out there. They live in just about every environment imaginable, from deep soil and fresh water to plants, animal bodies, bird nests, and even hot springs. Despite their tiny size, mites are hugely influential in ecosystems around the globe. They also have a variety of lifestyles. For example, some are free-living, while others are parasitic or even mutualistic, depending on the species. Let's dive deeper into some of the key types of mites and what makes each of them unique. First up, we have soil mites, from the order Oribatidae. These are very small mites which are essential in breaking down organic matter, much like springtails. Now, even though they are very small, the number of them in the world is quite large, with 12,000 described species and over 100,000 species estimated. Actually, soil mites are the most abundant soil-dwelling arthropods, even outnumbering springtails. They're also detritivores, meaning they feed on decaying material, fungi, and tiny microorganisms, which is expected. But their life cycle is actually really wacky, because they have both a larval and nymph stage. They've even got a pre-larval stage. But it gets wilder, because development can range from a few weeks to several years, depending on the species and environmental conditions. One noteworthy species is Archagozetes longicetosis. This species is often used in laboratory research due to its asexual reproduction and relatively large size, for a mite that is. It plays an important role in decomposing organic material in tropical soils. Next up, we've got parasitic mites, which, as the name suggests, are parasitic and live off other organisms. One such mite is Varroa destructor, which are infamous for the damage they cause to honeybee colonies. These mites attach themselves to developing bees, feeding on their fat body tissue, which weakens them and makes them more susceptible to viruses. The mites reproduce inside the brood cells of the hive, timing their life cycle precisely with the development of the bee. Their presence has led to colony collapse disorder in many areas. And one of my colleagues in Hawaii, while I was pursuing my master's, was actually doing research on them. But there are quite a few different parasitic mites, because they can be found on all forms of life from other arthropods to mammals, which segues us into animal-associated mites, of which there are 2 species known to live on human skin. These would be Demodex folliculorum and Demodex brevis. These mites are almost microscopic and typically go unnoticed, residing in our hair follicles and sebaceous glands. Now, what the heck is a sebaceous gland, you might ask? They are small glands connected to hair follicles which excrete a substance called sebum or skin oils, and they're basically there to keep your skin from drying out. While usually harmless, overgrowth of these mites has been linked to skin conditions such as rosacea. Now, rosacea is a chronic skin condition that causes redness, visible blood vessels, and often acne-like bumps, usually on the face. While it can be influenced by genetics, stress, and diet, scientists have discovered that people with rosacea often have higher populations of Demodex mites on their skin. In particular, Demodex folliculorum may harbor a bacterium called Bacillus oleronius, which can trigger an immune response in humans. That inflammation might be what's driving the characteristic symptoms of rosacea. In other words, it's not always the mite itself causing the problems. It's the bacteria the mites are carrying or the immune system's reaction to the mites. Research is ongoing, but this discovery has already changed how dermatologists approach treatment. Topical treatments and antibiotics that reduce Demodex populations or target associated bacteria are now commonly used to manage rosacea symptoms. And you might not want to hear this next part, but it's believed that over 90% of all adults have these skin mites, with prevalence increasing with age. And with that out of the way, let's talk about predatory mites, such as those in the family Phytoseiidae. These mites are actually beneficial to farmers and gardeners because they actively hunt and feed on pest mites, insect eggs, and small arthropods. Predatory mites are often released as a form of biological control in greenhouses and agricultural settings where they play a role in naturally balancing pest populations. So this is really cool because we do not need chemical pesticides if we're using these predatory mites. Now, one noteworthy species is Phytoseiulis persimilis, a natural enemy of spider mites. This mite is widely used in greenhouse biological control and can dramatically reduce pest populations. And speaking of spider mites as a pest, we're now going to talk about plant-feeding mites, particularly spider mites from the family Tetranicidae. These tiny red or yellow pest mites are known for causing significant damage to crops. They suck plant juices from leaves, causing a speckled appearance, often leading to yellowing, drying, and leaf drop. Heavy infestations can result in the death of entire plants, and to make things worse, these mites spin fine webs over the plant surfaces, which protect them from predators and weather. Their rapid life cycles and high reproduction rates make them tough to manage, which is why fighting them with another fast reproducing mite, like Phytoseiulis persimilis, works really well. You guys remember the gall wasp episode, right? Well, now we're going to talk about gall mites, from the family Eriphiidae. These are incredibly tiny, only about 0.1 millimeters long, and have an unusual worm-like shape with only 2 pairs of legs. Gall mites feed on plant tissues and induce the formation of galls, just like gall wasps. And these galls provide both food and shelter for the developing mites. Some gall mites are so specific that they only target a single plant species, or even a single part of a plant. One noteworthy species is Acaria fraxiniflora. This mite induces, quote, ash flower galls, unquote, on male ash trees. Though the galls are unsightly, they are mostly harmless to the tree. Now, the galls are so strange, it's actually really hard to describe them, but if you know what a sumac flower looks like, then that would be a good comparison. Okay, let's talk about some unusual behaviors and co-evolution. Some mites display a fascinating behavior called foracy, where they hitch a ride on larger insects like beetles or flies to reach new environments or food sources. Now, I actually brought this up a while back in my episode on harlequin beetles. They don't harm the host, it's more like a free taxi service to a new location. Over time, certain mite species have evolved to be incredibly specialized to their hosts. Like some beetles or birds even carry mites that help clean their bodies by feeding on fungi or detritus. Mites also have an ancient legacy. Fossil evidence shows that mites have been around for over 410 million years, with some perfectly preserved in amber. This long evolutionary history has allowed them to diversify into nearly every ecological niche imaginable, which is why we have so many different kinds of mites today. And with that, we're gonna wrap up this episode. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to Insects for Fun, and make sure to hit that star if you listen on Spotify, or rate and review the show on Apple or other platforms if you haven't already. Your support goes a very long way for this DIY insect podcast. And until next time, stay curious.